What's going on, Lakers fans, and welcome into episode 50 of the LakeShow Flow. I am your host, Gio, and it feels crazy to say 50 episodes. I mean, it feels like a milestone, but at the same time, part of me feels like we should be on episode 150, honestly. Like, if I was in grind mode, if I. Anyways, I'm not here to, pout about my own behaviors. It's on me. I need to get back on the grind, especially when Joe gets back here. It would be nice to start recording this, and I've said it multiple times. But, anyways, I'm getting distracted. I just want to say happy 4th of July to those who celebrate, because that is when the episode will be released. And if you don't celebrate, just happy Friday. It's a wonderful time to be alive. It's a wonderful time to, embrace the positives and embrace family and embrace anything that makes you smile. Just embrace it. I know life isn't always pretty. I know it's not always easy, but that's why we have to look at what we do have. Count your blessings, and it shouldn't take a, holiday or whatever you consider today to see that. So, anyways, getting distracted again. In today's episode of the Lake Show Flow, I just want to give you guys a little rundown of what I'm gonna be talking about. So, a lot has happened. It's been a long time since the last episode. It's been like 2 months or over that, and so much has happened, including the Lakers being sold, which is insane. If you aren't up to speed with that and you listen to this, which I doubt that most people don't know by now, but just in case you don't, the Lakers were sold to the Guggenheim. I think they're formerly known as the Guggenheim Group. Mark Walter is at the head of that, and he's had a lot of success with the Dodgers, and they're on the road to becoming a dynasty. With Shohei Ohtani, with all the moves they've made. We saw what happened. If you watch baseball, if you keep up a little bit, you know that they have a God Squad over there, and so there's a lot. There's a lot to look forward to as a Laker fan. There's a lot of positives with that sale happening. But today is not about the sale. I was just kind of recapping what has happened. And outside of that sale that did happen, the Lakers also purchased, basically purchased their way into the second round to get higher. I mean, they already had a second round pick, but a very late one. They end up moving up and selecting Adu Thero with that pick. And I encourage you guys to look up some tape on Adu Thero if you haven't. He is an athletic freak, and I look forward to just seeing the potential and seeing him grow. That's going to be a fun pick to keep track of, and hopefully he can develop it with the Lakers, and he could be one of our guys that we see just go from a rookie to hopefully a role player at minimum. And you never know. He can end up starting next to Luka one day. We'll see. But with free agency, that's the big, topic right now. That's where everybody's head's at. That's where there's so many people stressed out, panicking. I honestly feel like there's a subsection of, I'm pretty sure it's like this with any fan base, but with the Lakers especially, of course, my timeline's always gonna, show me Lakers stuff. I just feel like there's so much outrage and doom and gloom from our fan base that it almost feels like that's the majority sometimes. And I know that there's a lot of logical people, but on social media, it just seems like, I don't know if people got bills to pay and they got a lot of these blue checkmark accounts that need the Twitter revenue. I don't know if it's why they're posting all this negative stuff, because they know it's going to cause a lot of people like me to maybe comment there, or people buying into the doom and gloom and say, you know what I mean, like that fear mongering. It works in all aspects. I think people love to be divided, and I can go on a tangent with that, but the point is, it's been a lot of hot and cold takes with this entire offseason. If you didn't know, the Lakers, one thing that did go down so far is they did lose Dorian Finney-Smith, and he ends up signing a 4-year deal with Houston. And Houston is really stacking up. They traded for KD. They, signed Dorian Finney-Smith. They signed Clint Capella, who I didn't even think they really needed. They have a lot of players on that squad. They're gearing up for a title run. They re-signed Steven Adams, re-signed Fred VanVleet. Like they've made a lot of moves to really bolster that team, and they're probably one of the biggest threats. Denver's made some good moves. OKC's the defending champs. Congrats to them. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of activity. Now, the reason I bring up the DFS, losing him is, in essence, losing him paved the way to the Lakers being able to sign DeAndre Ayton and as well as Jake LaRavia. He was a 23-year-old. He was on the Sacramento Kings and the Grizzlies. He's pretty, he's a pretty young prospect to build around, and hopefully we get to see his development as a player, because it's not like he's 30. Dorian Finney-Smith is 32. We know that he's only getting slower. We've seen him decline since before, like when he was his first stint with the Nets. When he first got there, he was faster. He was more, the Lakers were linked to him when he was still in his prime. At this point, you can argue he's exiting his prime, and he wanted more than 2 years. And so I don't fault the front office from not wanting to commit to Dorian Finney-Smith beyond a 2-year contract. Like, if you sign him for 4 years like Houston did, they're going to be in a spot where he's 35 going into that third year, and that contract ends up looking bad, and it's a depreciating asset, right? And I know a lot of people got mad saying that you need to keep a player like that and they should have been willing to pay him, and all these other crazy reports came out about how Rob Pelinka might have tried to taint his value and tell other teams that his knees, or no, it wasn't his knee. They misspoke. If you guys saw that report, it was his ankle that he got surgery on. And people were trying to say that it's Pelinka's fault, and I have to get into all that. Like I said, there's been a lot of doom and gloom, a lot of negative, and I'm going to try to stay away from that until the end. So outside of that, like I said, the Lakers did sign their starting center, DeAndre Ayton, and that's probably the biggest, most exciting news, because, yeah, there's narratives about DeAndre Ayton. There's narratives about how his motor can be low. There's narratives about how there was things coming out of Portland saying that he was late to flights. He even missed a game because of snow in his neighborhood or icy roads, or some report that came out. And I got to take a little deep dive into my opinions about the DeAndre Ayton thing. So what's important is he got signed for $8 million, right, which was the remainder after we signed Jake LaRavia for a portion of that mid-level exception. So $8 million, you didn't have to give up any of your assets in terms of like high level or high value assets like Dalton Connect, any picks, any expiring contracts. None of that was required to sign DeAndre Ayton. Now, when we're talking about players like Nick Claxton, possibly Daniel Gafford, Walker Kessler, those big men, if you can argue that all of them might be better to this point or more dependable than DeAndre Ayton because of his, new reputation. I mean, you got to keep in mind this guy was a former number 1 overall pick in the same draft class that Luka Doncic was in. Luka went number 3 in that draft class. And so, yeah, he hasn't lived up to expectations necessarily. And you, like I said, you can argue these other players might have, you probably wanted them more if you're a Laker fan. When you hear Nick Claxton, we don't really hear any drama about him. Daniel Gafford, same thing. Walker Kessler, the one that I think I was even the most excited if, there's the prospect of getting him. No drama, right? But you have to pay the price for those players, right? So DeAndre Ayton ends up getting a buyout from Portland. They pay him a chunk of his salary. He sacrifices $10 million of that. And then the Lakers are able to get him for so much cheaper because he's already getting paid from another team. So it's a very low risk but really high reward, because they lock him in for a 2-year contract. The second year he can opt out. The only reason he'd opt in is maybe his season didn't go as good, or who knows? I mean, who knows where we're at next year? The Lakers could have a lot more money. They could end up locking him in, or if they have their sights set on pairing him and Luka with someone else, if LeBron leaves or something, maybe he just opts in and helps the team. Who knows? We really don't know. Maybe there's some type of like favor where he knows he can get paid in 2027, and the Lakers are good to him. They took that chance on him. He wants to win. We don't really know where his mind's at. I doubt he would opt into the second year if he plays really good. But either way, the Lakers should have some money to pay him in that $20 million, maybe to $30 million range that they can afford to, for a starting center who's still, like I said, 26 years old, has so much room to improve. And people forget, this guy was in the finals within his first few years of being in the NBA. And he was next to Devin Booker. They had Chris Paul. They were probably there, and they didn't belong there. Like, it was a little ahead of schedule. But you got to understand, he was like the second option on that team. And maybe he's not a second best player on a championship team, and that's okay. We didn't sign him to be that. We didn't sign him to be the third. He will be the third on his best nights, possibly, right? But all we expect from him is to do the dirty work that a big man does, what he already does. He averages double double for his entire career so far, including in the playoffs. In that run when they went to the finals, he was a playoff riser. And yeah, there's narratives that came out that he gave up in this championship series and all these things, and I get it. And I'm not doubting that, that stuff could be true. But what I'm saying is there is potential that's possibly just not even tapped into 100%. He was in the finals way too young. He was depended on for a lot. Then he gets traded to Portland, and he's arguably their number one option because they're a young rebuilding team. I mean, they had like, what's his face? The name's at the tip of my tongue. It was a guy that was linked to the Lakers as well, and I can't think of his name right now. But it was Jeremy Grant. There it was. So yeah, they had him, who was kind of a vet and stuff. He had been, he was on the Nuggets before, and I forget. Oh, the Pistons, and then Trailblazers. But arguably, they brought in Ayton to kind of be their franchise cornerstone, and I think he was miscast in that role because if he couldn't even be the number two on a championship team, then how is he going to go to Portland where they really didn't have a direction, necessarily when he got traded there? And all of a sudden, he's just tasked with, you're the guy now. Like, whatever we're doing, it's going to be centered around you. I just think that was a miscast role for him. And the reason I say all this is to say he's in a role where, first of all, it's make or break. This is his final chance to work his way and play his way into his next big contract, right? You got the spotlight of the Lakers, so shout out to him for realizing, like, you know what, this is a spotlight, this is pressure. He could have went to Indiana and still played pretty good over there. They didn't have Tyrese Halliburton, but they just went to the finals. The spotlight's a little dimmer there. Even with them going to the finals, not having Tyrese Halliburton with his torn Achilles, that's gonna take a little bit less expectations. He could have took that route. They lost Miles Turner to the Bucks. He could have signed up for that and just kind of, just rejected the spotlight and the pressure of being a Laker, especially a Laker big man. The Lakers, they have a history of historically legendary big men on this roster over the years. So he signed up for what he knows what is to be expected of a Lakers player, let alone Lakers big. And he knows the pressure. He knows what's going to be expected. And he knows also that he has a player like Luka Doncic, who for a stretch last season, he had Jackson Hayes making all of us Laker fans think, you know what? Maybe Jackson could be the guy. Maybe Luka's so good that Jackson's going to be playing like Derek Lively or comparable. There were some people saying, is Jackson just better than Derek Lively? Like, I saw some side-by-side stats and, probably a little in over our heads, right? But we saw what happened in the playoffs. He fell out of the good graces of JJ and, he lost minutes and opportunity. But the point is, DeAndre Ayton, who looked great in that finals run for a lot of it next to Chris Paul and Devin Booker, now he gets to play with Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and Austin Reeves. And that makes his job and his life way more simplified. Now, are there questions about the defense? Are there concerns? Of course, but you paid $8 million and gave up no huge assets to bring DeAndre into this team. And people need to remember that, especially even fans of other teams or just naysayers and all these hot take specialists all over First Take. And they have like some discount Stephen A's right now because Stephen A's on vacation, I think. But I just see these clips coming up where people are like, they're crapping all over this move as if the Lakers... And here, some fans have this mindset too. And I know that this podcast is going to sound like a lot of just, I'm everywhere with it, but I'm still trying to stay on topic, I promise. But a lot of fans have this mindset that, like, DeAndre Ayton, if we didn't get Giannis or something, oh my God, like, what are we doing? Like, DeAndre Ayton? Like, they have all this narrative because he kind of fizzled out. Like, his name doesn't hold the same weight as it used to. And people, it's almost like if we don't get the big star, then we're screwed. People forget we have Luka Doncic, we have LeBron still, at least for now. We'll get into all the drama that could be surrounded that. But this might be a long episode, by the way. So shout out to you if you're still listening. You know who you are because, only you know who you are. I don't know who's listening right now. Leave a comment or something. Let me know. But the point is, we still have these players that DeAndre Ayton comes in. He doesn't need to be even an all-star. Like he can kind of just do his thing and be a role player. Like we went into the playoffs last year and we had Jackson Hayes as our starter, and we knew that he had a ceiling, but we also felt comfortable knowing that him and Luka had chemistry. So with DeAndre Ayton, like I said, a guy that's always averaged at least a double double with points and rebounds. He he's got a nice lob. He's a nice lob threat. He's got a nice skill set on offense. He can make the mid ranges and pick and pop. He can even stretch the floor a little bit. Like he's not the best 3 point shooter, but he can make one out there. So there's a lot of dynamic, offensive skills that putting that next to Luka, the defense has to be honest. With Jackson Hayes, they didn't really have to chase him and see if he stops at the mid range and pops, right? They just knew he was going for a lob. They knew he was where he was going. It was a little easier to defend, even though it was still effective because Luka's so damn good that they had to commit a lot of attention to Luka, and then that left Jackson sometimes just ready for the oop. But now with Ayton, you have to defend him at different parts of the I was gonna say the field, different parts of the court, because he's not just a singular lob threat or just layup threat. He can do a little more. He can stretch the floor a little bit. So there's a lot of his skill set that you just think about it. Next to LeBron, next to Luka, next to Reeves, there's a lot more spacing. There's a lot more open shots that'll be there. I'm not sure, if Rui's going to be that fifth starter that's with this group that I mentioned, but even he might even be even more open than he was last year. And he was open a lot. So there's a lot that DeAndre Ayton opens up for the floor. A lot of, and like I said, people like this was almost a done deal when he got bought out. I wouldn't doubt if his agent, who's the same agent as Luka, if they already orchestrated this whole thing, because as an agent, you're not only trying to help your clients like DeAndre Ayton, but if you can somehow help them both, and you're helping one client like Luka, who's like a superstar, and you want him to be successful in LA now, you got to think like he probably contacted Aiden, he contacted Rob and said, hey, you have a limited amount of assets to be able to get a center. How about I make this easier? And if DeAndre Ayton gets bought out, how about you guys sign him? He'll have free reign to sign where he wants. He can rebuild his value. And who knows, maybe he's a Laker for the rest of his career next to Luka. They're on the same exact timeline. Everything lines up. And like I said, if he for some reason just doesn't care about winning, doesn't make the most of this opportunity, takes it for granted, we're not committing a bunch of resources. We're not going to look back and say, wow, the Lakers traded Dalton Connect, who ended up being like a really good player, or a first round pick that was really valuable. Like, we didn't trade any of that. We didn't get rid of nothing to get, DeAndre Ayton. I mean, technically you can say that it was a trade of D'Lo and those second rounders and DFS basically for Jake LaRavia and then DeAndre Ayton. And if you really think about it, with DFS declining and commanding so many years on a contract, it's almost like a worthy trade to me, because you get a 23-year-old player who has a lot of potential in Jake LaRavia, and then you get your starting caliber center, 26-year-old DeAndre Ayton, who to me, I think we're going to see like possibly his best basketball, even better than his finals run, because he's 26. He's like, he can be entering his prime right now. You can argue he hasn't even hit that yet. Some people might think of DeAndre Ayton's prime as that finals run, but he was young. He was still wet behind the ears. He was still inexperienced. It was a lot right away, But with that experience, playing for Portland, like, I don't think anybody should ever just give half-ass effort. I'm not excusing the fact that he could have done more for Portland and tried harder there. But what I'm saying is, we can also understand that the motivation to go play for the Blazers that had like no direction after Dame was traded, like, you can argue that that's really hard to get up in the morning and say, you know what, I'm about to go and help this team, tank technically. Like, how do you even, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of hard to think that that was who he really is, or the only ceiling he has, and all these different things. It's like, you don't really try to enable that mindset of like, don't try because you're in Portland, but you also try to say, okay, well, now you're in LA. Now you're either getting a big contract, and I forgot who it was. Somebody on a podcast said that he's basically in a place where he's either going to sign, another contract for like 16 million a year, or he's only going to make like 16 million in total for the rest of his career, something like that. I forgot which podcast I was listening to, but it's true. He's at a point in his career where it's make or break, and I've said that already. But it's just a I don't see how you lose in this situation if you're the Lakers. And like I said, on his best nights, he will be the third option, but most nights the fourth, and that just takes so much pressure off. And people got to remember when the Lakers built that makeshift roster, when Kawhi and Paul George ended up joining the Clippers, and it felt like they plotted against the Lakers to kind of like weaken our options and just make Rob Pelinka have to scramble and build a roster. Well, guess what? It paid off. Rob Pelinka brought in guys like Rajon Rondo, guys like Dwight Howard, who was a former Laker and redeemed himself in the purple and gold, and JaVale McGee. All these guys that had all these narratives. Remember, people used to make fun of JaVale McGee. He was on the Shaqtin' a Fool. He was like the face of it. You know, Dwight Howard, he was starting to fizzle out. He was at the back end of his career. That's why they signed for so cheap. And guess what? The dynamic of having them and them playing and buying into their roles, including Rondo, there's a like change of scenery and all that stuff's important. And I think with DeAndre Ayton, this is going to be arguably the easiest basketball he's ever played next to Luka. Like I said, will he be responsible for a lot of defense? We got to see him step up. Yeah, but he's also not going to be given the ball and fed the ball in the post every offensive possession. So he's probably going to have more energy to just rebound, play better defense. And I've seen the tape, and literally, your eyes will not tell you any lies. If you go watch the tape, go watch these possessions of DeAndre Ayton switching onto guys like Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, even guards, and he's pretty good with the scheme that JJ runs with all the switching. Like, and sometimes you can argue JJ just kind of defaulted to that based on the personnel. We might not even play switch all the time, but when it needs to happen, when it does happen naturally, I'm just saying DeAndre Ayton is underrated as a switch defender and a perimeter defender. I'm not saying he's shut down. I'm not saying he's Giannis. I'm not saying he's that dynamic. All I'm saying is people underestimate, because who the heck was watching the Blazers while he was there, right? I'm just saying people have this narrative, and until they see it on the court, then they might say, oh crap, like we got a bargain with DeAndre Ayton. Now, when it comes to the backup big, the Lakers obviously were still hoping to hear something else. But like I said, structure will be important with DeAndre Ayton. Now, when you talk about the backup, now, when it comes to what happened today, right, when I'm recording this, Jackson Hayes was re-signed. We re-signed Jackson Hayes to a veteran minimum contract. Keep that in mind. And now there's this clause, or not even a clause, it's basically the ability for a player to veto a trade when they've signed 2 consecutive one-year deals with the team. It was misinterpreted when reported that he has basically a de facto no trade clause, and everyone panicked. Everyone freaked out. And the problem is with that is it's a minimum contract. Like, people just read the whole trade clause or whatever, or no trade clause, and they didn't look into the CBA rules and all that, and it was pretty easy. I was able to see that clarification pretty quickly, from other people commenting and explaining it. But people were outraged as if the Lakers gave him this clause. And then when they found out that, it's part of the CBA, they were still freaked out, saying, well, Rob should have known, though, because now Jackson has a no... Okay, it's a minimum contract, and he can be waived. You can waive Jackson Hayes if he plays bad, if, the legal troubles he was going through, if those things resurface and he gets in trouble. Like, it's a minimum. You just release him if it comes to that. But people got to remember, too, this was also the guy that gave everybody hope in the Lakers, fan base, to say, like, wow, we can probably win the championship, possibly. Like I said, we're in over our heads, and it came to bite us when we happened to match up with the Timberwolves. It was the worst matchup possible, in terms of their defenders, in terms of their play style, having Gobert, all that stuff. But the point is, we were at a point where we're almost convinced that Jackson Hayes could be the guy to get us to the next, at least be enough for Luka to have that lob threat. And he was playing pretty good defense too at that time. So people forget that there was chemistry there. People also forget that Jackson Hayes is the first guy that Luka went to go have dinner with, and they shared the same agent. And it was him, it was Luka, and it was their agent Bill Duffy. Same guy that represents DeAndre Ayton. So relationships matter, right? And I get it. a lot of Laker fans right now, or I mean, not a lot of them, but I mean, there's a subsection of Laker fans that are clutch sports LeBron fans, right? They were okay when LeBron was asserting his dominance or whatever you want to call it, or asserting his, the people he knows like Clutch and Rich Paul. They were getting people contracts like KCP. They were getting other players throughout the years that were under that agency. People were okay with that. LeBron's people, LeBron's fans were all okay with that. But oh damn, you better, Lord forbid Luka is the new guy in town, 26-year-old superstar, and he can't get his guys contracts. He can't give his preferences. Like, hey, you know what? We're both represented by Bill Duffy. Hey, DeAndre, ask out, see if they buy you out. And hey, Rob, you guys should sign him. And that's the easiest way to get our starting center, and we can fulfill all this untapped potential, because he didn't play with Luka. You know what I mean? Like, that's the mindset Luka probably had. He never played with me, and I'm going to make him look great, just like I made Jackson Hayes look great, just like I made Lively look good. We don't even know if Lively is as good as he looked next to Luka, right? So, like I said, people forget that that chemistry is there. And I don't even think he's going to be depended on as the direct backup anyways. This just gives the Lakers more flexibility. It would be dumb to not lock that in for a minimum contract of a guy that could play with Luka for stretches, even if he comes in for 10, 12 minutes a game and DeAndre is playing like the other 30 to 35. Like, and there's some small ball mixed in there depending who else we get. Like, is this really something to be that outraged by? People gave up on the prospect of signing Al Horford because of this signing. What does it affect? Al Horford could still sign to the biannual exception. So nothing's really affected. People just see the name that got signed and it wasn't the one they're waiting on, which is Horford, which apparently Horford's mulling, either retirement, signing with the Lakers, or signing with the Warriors. Apparently he's leaning more towards the Warriors, which kind of makes sense. His role would probably be a little bigger there. But anyways, people always have this panic mode. Oh my gosh, you guys re-signed Jackson instead of Al Horford. You guys gave him a no trade. It just hurts my soul to see, and I don't know why. I don't know why I allow things to kind of bother me, but maybe it's because I know I can talk about it eventually. Because whenever I got on this microphone, I would be able to vent. And honestly, at the end of the day, I appreciate all those who do tune in, but it's just an outlet for me at the end of the day. Because, I mean, I'll send it, I'll share it, I'll try to get as many people on here as I possibly can to hear me out. But it just feels good, even if it's not as big as other podcasts, which that's on me. I got to grind to the point where I can just go live. When all this news hits, I got to be able to go live, and I will get there. And hopefully, when Joe gets here, we'll be able to do that too. But the point is, this Jackson Hayes thing, it would have made less sense to not sign him, because you don't know what's going to happen with Horford. You need to have that, in order to know that you have Hayes there. You have him locked in. And it helps the relationship with Luka. Luka's still got to re-sign. Why would you already lost DFS, Dorian Finney-Smith, who he was really close friends with. But I'm pretty sure he understood that was the cost of doing business, knowing that, Dorian decided to go get paid and not even get paid. He did get paid, but he also chose the security because he's at the tail end of his career. He was looking for a few more years for security. I'm pretty sure Luka and him had that conversation, as well as the fact that, hey, if I want Ayton to actually be locked in here and get the money that he wants to make up for his buyout, then I got to sacrifice one of my best friends in Dorian. It is what it is. At least I know he's taken care of, right? So Luka understands the cost of doing business, but you don't want to push it and be like, well, we're just going to disregard the fact that you and Jackson are cool. We're going to disregard the fact that you had him looking really good as a starter. We're going to disregard it, and we're not even going to bring him back as a third option possibly. So, like I said, it made way more sense to just bring him back, and also provides the Lakers with some security because, we're waiting for Al Horford's decision. Most likely, he'll probably end up with the Warriors, but on the possibility that he can come in and be almost like a mentor to guys like Ayton, I would love that, right? But we can't bank on it because he could just retire. Or with the Warriors, I mean, he might have a bigger role, like I said. But the thing is, this helps the Lakers focus on other needs and other positions of need, like, replacing Rui in the starting lineup. I think that is something that might need to be done and makes more sense because as much as I do appreciate Rui, he was shooting really good from the outside. He was arguably the third best player in the playoffs for the Lakers. because, Austin kind of fell off a little bit in the playoffs. He had an injury apparently, but anyways, the point is Rui did step up, but he's also limited in what you need next to a backcourt of Austin Reeves and Luka, and also an aging star in LeBron. And I think Ayton is going to help with some of the, deficiencies on defense, because he can at least he's a legit 7 foot. I think he's like 7'1" with a 7'6" wingspan. Like he's gonna be able to at least contest, right? At least disrupt some things. Unlike Jackson, I feel like, who said it? I think it might have been Trevor Lane that was saying he's almost like a wing that's trapped in a center, like a 7-footer's body, and it makes sense, right? So to me, you need someone on the wings on the outside to really help with Luka and LeBron, or with Luka and Reeves, because don't get me wrong, I think Luka's motivated. Luka's lost weight already. You can see it in all these pictures that that have been put out. And I think Austin Reeves motivated to prove to people that were doubting him after last year. He seems to fuel, off of a lot of this type of stuff, all the negativity. And that's why I love Austin, because he's in the biggest spotlight that you can possibly be in. And it seems like he's always wanting to get better and just make fans proud of him, and I can respect that. We can talk about if him and Luka are a good long-term fit. Maybe I'll bring that into the equation, either in this or in the next episode. But the point is, you need someone like Wiggins, even though they're asking for an arm and a leg, because they're asking for a first-round pick, Dalton Connect, and Rui. That's way too much. Like, when they stop posturing themselves and they stop posturing to try to like get as much as they can, like maybe they can do business, and maybe we can get him, Andrew Wiggins, for Rui, and maybe another expiring. Maybe we send Gabe Vincent back over there if we end up signing someone like D'Anthony Melton, who's a free agent. But the point is, you need someone like Wiggins rather than having Rui in there, who defensively is very limited. I think even from just from like a dog perspective, right? Because you look at our starting lineup, and I mean, Luka is probably the most. He probably got that dog in him a lot more than someone like Ayton, a lot more than someone like even LeBron. Like, I've said it many times, LeBron, he is a dog, but he's more like a silent killer when it comes to things. He's not trash talking, like aggressive, like to that extent, the way Luka can get. Someone like Wiggins can bring some of that personality too. He has championship pedigree. He is more of an aggressive defender. I'm not saying he's perfect. He is, getting older too. But I just think you bring him in and he fulfills a lot more and plugs a lot of the holes that we don't have filled right now at this moment. So that is a move that could be done. But for now, I mean, if Miami wants to play hardball still, there's names like Amir Coffey out there. People brought up trading for someone like Thibault, D'Anthony Melton. Like I said, he's coming off an ACL injury, but he should be fine by the time the season starts. And he's from LA, USC. That's where he went to school. So, I mean, everything's written on the wall for him to just sign, kind of like a reestablish his value type of thing, show that he's okay after that injury, and also just be home. And, he had a workout with the Lakers a long time ago too, and I saw footage come up on the timeline about that. So I don't mind signing him. He's a good player when he's healthy, and I think that could be an underrated signing. Now, Damian Lillard, in the shocking move that happened, he ended up being bought out, and now he's a free agent. I don't know what happens with that. I mean, if he's going to be ready by the playoffs and he can buy in to knowing like, hey, you're coming off this devastating Achilles, do you want to come off the bench? Because I don't think you send, maybe if he's playing really good, you send Reeves into the bench. But if you're already established and Reeves is playing great ball by the playoffs, you don't want to just send him to the bench all of a sudden. So there's a lot of little, there's a lot of bells and whistles when it comes to a Damian Lillard type of signing. More than likely, I see him going to the Warriors because he's from Oakland, and he did want to come back to the West Coast apparently. So I see him going back to not back to the Warriors, but back to the Bay Area and going to the Warriors, and maybe him and Curry could be the new Splash Bros, but we'll see. But like I said, signing Jackson Hayes, signing Ayton, signing Jake LaRavia, people need to remember the Lakers have very limited assets. And I don't know if you guys hear, but there's some fireworks going off outside. I don't know if the microphone picked it up. But the Lakers went into this offseason with such limited assets that these moves shouldn't be looked at as like, oh my God, the Lakers have done the worst. The Lakers are bringing in Jackson Hayes, but the Lakers are signing someone like Ayton whose values went down. The Lakers are, signing Jake LaRavia. Who is this guy? You know what I mean? Like, the Lakers, here's the thing, they were able to sign these people without giving up Dalton, without giving up a first, without giving up expirings. There's still moves to be made, but they still haven't given up anything. They still have opportunities to make moves with the assets that they still have. So, yeah, on paper, the roster looks incomplete. The roster looks like you need to trade someone. The roster looks like you need to get someone better than Rui in the starting lineup defensively. So, that stuff can be true, but also what can be true is we can appreciate the value and the moves that have been made. And the thing about Rob Pelinka, and I heard Empire Jeff, if you guys ever heard of him, Empire Jeff TV on YouTube. He's actually really good. I've been listening to him for a while, but he made the point that, like, have we really seen Rob Pelinka do his job, like, without the pressures of Clutch around him, the pressures of Jeannie Buss and, like, the people that were running the franchise with her? Have we seen him actually, like, just be able to lock in and just do what he thinks is best, not having Clutch breathing down his neck, not having Kurt and Linda Rambis, who were part of Jeannie's people, like I said, that type of ownership, like, kind of trying to have their favorites and kind of geared the team the way they want it? Like, have we actually seen Rob just be able to be 100% in charge? And that was something I didn't even think about, but it's so true. And I'm not here to just go to bat for Rob and stick my neck out for him. But here's the problem with this divisive culture, that it almost exists in everything. The world is just divided on everything. We got to be at each other's necks all the time. Like, it's always us and them. Like, it expands to so many other parts of the world, and we don't even got to get into that. But the point is, it seems like people, if you even stick up for Rob a little bit, if you're even realistic a little bit, people think that you're just a Rob stan. It's like, I don't have a crazy attachment to Rob Pelinka. Like, it's not about that. It's just about knowing, like, okay, Rob, you know what? I understand that you only have limited assets. You have expiring contracts. You have, like, one actual pick, and the rest are swaps right now. You have Dalton Connect, who, low key, you probably want to keep him because you got him at such a value last year. You don't want to have to trade him, but he's one of the assets. Like, you have to find the right deals. And there was also George Sedano. I'm pretty sure that's his name. I hope I didn't butcher that, but it is. Sedano's the last name for sure. But he was on the radio show talking about it and saying, like, this next move, you have to get it right when it comes to whatever trade you do. If you trade Dalton, if you trade that first, if you trade those expirings, you can't mess the move up. So that's a lot of pressure. Why do you think Rob probably felt like, you know what, this is a blessing, even if it was orchestrated by Luka and Bill Duffy and Ayton? It's a blessing that fell into his lap in a way, because now you don't got to give up a bunch of assets to get the center. You get a guy that's 26. You get a guy that's in the same class as Luka. Him and Luka actually been friends too. I didn't even mention that. But they're already cool with each other. They're probably going to love playing together. And his life is simple when it comes to basketball with Luka and LeBron and AR. And I already went through all that. Like I said, if you're still here with me, thank you. I've been talking for this is probably going to be the longest episode I've ever put out. But thank you for still listening if you're still here. But the point is, these moves are not easy. And people can sit there and think that, people can just move mountains. Rob Pelinka could just make a miracle happen. And I get it. Him getting Luka, maybe it really inflated their expectations. Seeing all these other teams make moves that have more assets, maybe it really makes their expectations go up. But we can't be that spoiled. We got to understand. And don't get me wrong, it has not been perfect. I was mad last year too when they didn't make any moves. When AD was requesting a big man before we got Luka, I wanted them to actually do it. But even then, there wasn't, like, the craziest assets either. And people forget that Rob did a lot for the duo of AD and LeBron. Did he do enough? That's arguable. But he did a lot, though. They wanted Russell Westbrook, right? Him and AD talked to Russell Westbrook. They tried to get Dame first. Dame didn't want to leave Portland. He was still on that shtick. Then they pivoted to Russell. And that was what ended up happening. Instead of the Lakers ending up getting, I think they could have traded for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner at one point. Either way, it doesn't even matter who they could have. The point is, they got Russell Westbrook because LeBron and AD wanted that, and they believed in that trio, and we see how that turned out. So when you risk that much, you give up a former champion for your team like Kuzma, you give up all the draft capital that was required to get someone like Russ. you have to look at that, and I don't fault him for being so hesitant. And it almost feels like he knew that he gave up a lot of assets in that move, so he wanted a few years to kind of rebuild and reestablish assets. And guess what? The patience paid off, and he was able to move assets to get Luka instead. Yeah, he didn't get the big man for AD that he wanted. A lot of people were like, "Oh, but then he traded for Mark Williams right away when he got Luka." Well, yeah, he's turning a new chapter. It's a fresh page, and now he can just focus on building with Luka. Now he feels like he almost saved his job, because guess what? LeBron and AD weren't criticized really in the public eye the way Rob has been. He's been crucified in the public eye for getting the Russ for doing the Russ trade, for not getting the big that AD wanted. Like, he's been crucified for a move that his stars requested. So yeah, then he re-upped, and now he's embracing, he's embracing all the attention he got for the Luka thing, signing autographs. He's probably just relieved that for once he's not the villain. He's not the villain, right? Because the last time he was the hero was 2020, when he went and built that roster out of nowhere, when Kawhi and Paul George, they did what they did, like I mentioned, and he built the championship roster, and it worked out. So that was the last time he was really, really praised. In 2021, I think we should praise him too. He put together a back-to-back champion. He literally got so many good players on that team. Injuries stopped that team. And there's a lot of people that believe what I believe. And that team could have repeated. Okay? So arguably, he's built two championship teams. One of them, injuries got the best of us. The Solomon Hill thing, the AD trying to play and getting hurt again in that Phoenix series, and it was all but over. Like, those injuries ruined that. But arguably, Rob built another championship team. Yeah, it's a what if, so maybe we won't call it a championship team. But he built a good team that could have won, right? Coulda, shoulda. And after that, it was the Russ trade. Then it was having to get off of Russ and have to, work with what you got still. And yeah, I think maybe he was hesitant, because he probably did operate out of desperation, because LeBron and AD were probably on his neck. Like, we really want Russ. We really think we could win with Russ, And it didn't work out. So it was all in a span of a few years. And I think, yeah, Rob did get a little complacent. He did get hesitant on building around that duo. I don't know if it was just him, though. It could have been ownership, too, that were like, you know what? Excuse my language, but they probably said, fuck that. They made us trade all that for Russ, and it didn't work. Look what happened. Then it was a hassle to even get rid of Russ. So anyways, that's a whole tangent in and of itself. But even with me saying all that, it doesn't mean that I'm a Rob defender, okay? I am a Rob understander, if anything. Like, I understand as much as I can. I'm not in the rooms with them, but I can see it. When you actually use logic rather than emotion, you really think about it, and you're like, you know what? I really understand, at least a little bit. And here's the thing, too, is we're in the generation of player fans. And it's so crazy. It's like a cult-like thing now. There's literally more, it almost seems like there's more player fans than team fans. And I get it. It's a new era with the LeBron. He kind of with the LeBron, I don't know why I keep saying the LeBron, but with the way LeBron kind of geared us in this player, driven league, and people controlling their own destinations, unlike the owners used to. Maybe that's why it's mostly player fans now, or so it seems. But that's what kind of clouds people's visions. All they care about is their favorite player, kind of like stacking chips to kind of argue the GOAT debates and all that when it comes to LeBron. And I don't know. It's just like their priorities are always going to be, how does my guy get the most success? But then they don't even know enough about the assets that are able to be moved. They don't know enough about the failed experiments that their guy tried to sign off on with the Russ thing. Like, all that stuff is important. If you're going to complain and bitch and moan about the stuff that doesn't get done, think about what has been done and what hasn't worked out because of your same player that you worship like a god. Okay? So that is my rant when it comes to all that. And I'm pretty sure I covered pretty much everything that I needed to in this. It's just been a packed episode. This is almost 50 minutes now. Yeah, we're at the 45-minute mark damn near. So I appreciate those who have stayed locked in and listening. Maybe you toned me out by now, but if you're still here, I appreciate you. And like I said, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to. Don't let the doom and gloom people get into your ear. Don't pay attention to the first take, the people that want that shock value and they want to get clicks, they want to get views. Most of those people are probably just trying out for spots next to Stephen A. So they want to say all the crazy stuff so that they can get a spot on TV when the main star is in town again, which is Stephen A. He's the face of that show. So that's all I think it is. People just want to say the craziest things so that they get a job, or they get some TV time again. But the point is, be positive, count your blessings. I hope everybody has a blessed Friday, a blessed 4th of July, however you spend today. And I will be back with whenever the Lakers make another move. I'm going to cover move by move now so that I don't have to talk for 50 minutes just to talk about everything that's happened or get into all these rants. So that way we can go back to like 20-minute episodes and not this crazy one. But I'm still going to put this out, and I hope you got something out of this. I hope that it helped you get perspective if you didn't know all the things that I've been listening to and looking at. I'm like, my brain is so locked in on the Lakers, it's ridiculous. It's probably not good for me, but I'm a passionate fan. That's why I'm even on here talking to you, whoever listens to this. So I just want to say, if you're new here or you've been here, please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, comments, let me know what you think. And yeah, we'll be back with some more episodes really soon, but that's going to do it for the Lake Show Flow, and we'll see you guys next time.